The forest exhaled a breath of frost-laced air, a frigid whisper against Risa's exposed skin, mirroring the glacial chill that had settled deep within her bones for weeks. Each rustle of decaying leaves beneath her worn boots sounded like a judgment, each distant, mournful howl of a wolf a mocking echo of the bond she believed irrevocably severed. 24 years of life, and yet she felt like a ghost, an unacknowledged presence haunting the edges of a world that had once been her sanctuary. Alpha King Kalor Windrek's silence had been a weapon, honed and devastating, carving a chasm between them that no love, no loyalty, no shared history could bridge. She had seen the signs, the abrupt closing of doors, the clipped, shortened answers, a distance that had settled into their very bond like an insidious frost. He had allowed her to believe the worst, allowed her heart to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces without a single word of defense, leaving her to carry the unbearable weight of his perceived betrayal. Tonight, under the unforgiving gaze of a sliver moon, she would finally make her retreat, a silent exile from a life she no longer belonged to, walking away from the man who had effortlessly broken her. The familiar scent of pine and damp earth, usually a comforting embrace, now felt like a suffocating shroud. Risa pulled the threadbare cloak tighter around her, the rough wool doing little to ward off the cold that seeped not just into her body, but into the very marrow of her spirit. Her breath plumed in the frigid air, each exhalation a visible sigh of her profound despair. For weeks, the air in the Windrek lands had been thick with unspoken words, heavy with Kalor's growing distance. It wasn't merely a physical separation. It was a devastating withdrawal of spirit, a chilling retreat of his very essence from their once vibrant, shared connection. Their bond, once a vivid tapestry woven from shared thoughts, tender touches, and fierce emotions, had frayed into a brittle, almost non-existent thread, leaving her hollow and bereft. She felt like a phantom, moving through rooms where she was no longer seen, her presence a palpable discomfort to the very pack she had once helped lead as their Omega. The pack, her family, now averted their gazes, their usual deference replaced by a strained pity that felt far more cruel than outright hostility. Her mind, an endless loop of torment, replayed the last time she had truly looked into Kalor's eyes, a memory that twisted in her gut, like a poisoned blade. It had been in his private study, the air thick with the scent of old parchment, ancient magic, and his unique, intoxicating musk, a scent that now only brought a phantom ache to her chest, a ghost of comfort that was no longer hers. She had stood before him, her voice a fragile tremor in the hushed room, barely audible as she articulated the question that had clawed at her soul for days. Is there someone else? His eyes, usually a tempest of raw power and fierce loyalty, had been shadowed, unreadable depths reflecting only a profound, almost painful burden. He hadn't answered, hadn't denied, hadn't offered a single word of reassurance, of protest, of explanation. He had simply looked at her, a silent, burdened gaze that had, in its wordless eloquence, confirmed all her worst fears. In that agonizing moment, the Alpha King, the man who had sworn his life and his wolf to her, had become a stranger, his silence a confession of a love lost, a bond discarded for another, newer Omega. The humiliation had been a slow, agonizing burn, consuming her from the inside out. As an Omega, her role was to be the heart of the pack, the emotional anchor, the one who soothed the storms and strengthened the bonds. To be rejected, to be cast aside for another, was not just a personal slight. It was a public shaming, a declaration of her insufficiency, a broadcast of her failure. She had seen the pity in the eyes of the other pack members, the knowing glances, the hushed whispers that ceased the moment she drew near. They knew, they all knew, and Kalor, their king, their revered leader, had allowed it. He had allowed her to wither under the unspoken judgment, to believe she was no longer worthy of her position, her mate, or her pack. The weight of their collective silence had become an unbearable burden, heavier than any physical chains. With each arduous step, Risa pushed deeper into the ancient forest, leaving the familiar, once comforting scent of the Windrek territory further behind. The pack borders, once a symbol of absolute protection and belonging, now represented the invisible walls of her prison, marking the boundary of a home from which she was now self-exiled. She carried nothing but the threadbare clothes on her back, a small, battered satchel containing a few meager essentials. A flint, a dried jerky strip, a water skin, and a tattered map she'd drawn herself, detailing the lesser-known paths through the wildlands. The crushing weight of her broken heart was her heaviest burden. Her wolf, usually a comforting hum beneath her skin, a fierce and loyal presence, was now silent, dormant, mirroring the desolation within her. She sometimes wondered if she had lost her wolf entirely, so profound was the severance from her mate and her pack. It felt like a part of her soul had simply ceased to exist, leaving only an aching void. A sudden sharp snap of a twig nearby made her flinch, her head whipping around, her breath catching in her throat. Her instincts, dulled by grief and exhaustion, still flared with a primal spark of alarm. Nothing. Only the shadows stretching long and distorted in the meager moonlight, dancing with the swaying branches. But the unease lingered, a cold hand closing around her heart. This ancient forest, while familiar in its general layout, was also a place of wild, untamed magic, teeming with creatures both mundane and monstrous, and not all its inhabitants were benevolent. She was an omega, unbonded, vulnerable, and alone, a prime target for any rogue wolf, any territorial predator, or even worse, any human hunter who might sense her isolation and perceived weakness. The thought sent a fresh wave of fear through her, chilling her more effectively than the biting wind. She found a small, relatively sheltered alcove beneath the gnarled, twisted roots of an ancient oak, its branches reaching like skeletal fingers towards the indifferent sky. Here she sank to the cold, damp earth, her body aching with the exertion of her journey, her spirit aching far more profoundly. The decision to leave had been the hardest of her life, a desperate, final act of self-preservation. She couldn't bear to stay, to witness the eventual unveiling of Kaylor's new Omega, to be reminded daily of her own inadequacy, her perceived failure. Better to break away cleanly, to choose her own painful exile, rather than endure the final, public rejection that she felt was inevitable. The thought of seeing him, truly seeing him, with another at his side, was a torment she simply could not face. Sleep wouldn't come. Her mind raced, a frantic hamster on an endless wheel, caught in a loop of what-ifs and why-nots, replaying every interaction, every glance, every silence. Had she been blind? Had she missed the subtle signs earlier, the shifts in his mood, the guardedness in his gaze? Had their love, once so fierce and consuming, been nothing but a fragile illusion, destined to shatter at the first whisper of a challenge? She remembered his touch, the calloused warmth of his hand in hers, the possessive strength of his arm around her waist. She remembered the rare, breathtaking sight of his smile, the way his usually serious eyes would crinkle at the corners, revealing a glimpse of the gentle soul beneath the alpha's hardened exterior. Those memories, once her most cherished treasures, were now her most exquisite torments, each one a sharp shard of pain twisting deeper into her heart. A distant howl, deeper and more resonant than any other, pierced the profound silence of the night. It was a king's howl, unmistakable in its power and sorrow, a primal lament that vibrated through the very earth beneath her, resonating deep within her suppressed wolf, Kaylor. Even now his presence reached her, a mournful echo through the frayed, yet still stubbornly existing, bond. Was he calling for her? Or was it simply the usual nightly declaration of his domain, a sound that now mocked her solitude, a reminder of the power she had willingly abandoned? A single hot tear escaped, tracing a cold path down her dirt-smudged cheek, tasting of salt and bitter regret. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting with every fiber of her being the desperate, almost overwhelming urge to turn back, to run into his arms, to demand answers, explanations, a reason for his cruel silence. But she knew with a certainty that crushed her that his silence would be her only reply, a barrier more impenetrable than any stone wall. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting. A deep, unsettling quiet descended after Kaylor's powerful howl faded, broken only by the frantic thumping of her own heart against her ribs. She felt it then, a subtle shift in the very air, a faint metallic tang that wasn't blood, but something akin to primal fear, ancient and pervasive, clinging to the shadows. It was a scent she couldn't quite place, yet it prickled the hairs on her arms, sending a shiver of dread down her spine. That had nothing to do with the biting cold. A new, unfamiliar presence was near, closer than she dared imagine, something that moved with a predatory grace, unseen but deeply felt, its energy a dark ripple through the ancient trees. Risa knew with a chilling certainty that settled deep in her bones that her long night of solitude had just begun, and the dangers of the wildlands, whatever they might be, were far more immediate and terrifying than a broken heart. Her self-imposed exile had just led her from one form of pain directly into the jaws of another, far more tangible threat. The metallic tang in the air sharpened, no longer just a faint prickle, but a distinct, unsettling, coppery scent that seemed to cling to the very fabric of the night. Risa's blood ran cold, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This was not the scent of a common predator, nor the familiar musk of a rogue wolf. This was something ancient, something that smelled of stagnation and raw primal hunger, a stench that defied easy categorization yet screamed danger. Her instincts, dulled by grief, now flared with an intensity that bordered on agony, jolting her into hyper-awareness. Every shadow seemed to deepen, every rustle of leaves amplified into a thunderous roar in her ears. She was no longer just an omega broken by love. She was prey, hunted in the unforgiving heart of a forest that had suddenly turned hostile. She forced herself to breathe, shallow, quick gasps that did little to calm the tremor in her hands. Her eyes darted, straining to pierce the gloom, searching for any movement, any telltale glint of an eye. The ancient oak, once a symbol of shelter, now felt like a trap. Its massive roots a cage, its dense canopy blotting out the moon, plunging her into deeper shadow. Had Kaelor's silence, his betrayal, led her directly into this? Was this the universe's cruel joke, pushing her from emotional torment straight into physical annihilation? A bitter, almost hysterical laugh threatened to escape her throat, but fear choked it down. A low growl, more a vibration through the earth than an audible sound, rippled beneath her. It wasn't the guttural challenge of an alpha, nor the warning of a lone wolf. It was something deeper, a sound that spoke of immense, unnatural power, of something that had dwelled in darkness for too long. Her wolf, usually a comforting hum beneath her skin, remained stubbornly silent, a void where fierce instinct should have been. This profound silence was a torment, a stark reminder of the fragile connection she now possessed, or perhaps lacked entirely. The absence of her inner beast left her feeling utterly exposed, a human skin draped over a vulnerable, beating heart. She missed the raw power, the heightened senses, the protective snarl that her wolf could once effortlessly conjure. Now she was just Risa, an omega alone, unarmed, and terrified. She remembered Kaelor's strength, the way his hand could effortlessly crush a branch, the raw power that emanated from him in his wolf form. Her fingers instinctively twitched, reaching for a phantom hand, a ghost of his touch that had always promised safety. A wave of profound loneliness, sharp and aching, washed over her. Even if he had betrayed her, even if he had chosen another, there had been a time when his presence alone was enough to make any shadow flee. Now she was miles from his protection, from his pack, an exile in every sense of the word. The memory of his silent, burdened gaze, the one that had condemned her to this path, returned with chilling clarity. Had he known, had he sensed this danger, and that was why he pushed her away? No, that was too hopeful, too forgiving. He had simply let her go, letting her walk away into the unknown. With a jolt, Risa realized the growling was getting closer, circling the ancient oak. The scent was stronger now, a sickly sweet decay mingling with the metallic tang, like old blood and stagnant water. Whatever it was large, and it was hunting her. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, to freeze her in place. But deep within her, a tiny spark, a flicker of the Omega's innate resilience, ignited. She had always been resourceful, observant. Even if her power lay more in empathy and healing than in brute strength, she would not simply lie down and die, not yet. She pressed herself further into the curve of the roots, her gaze sweeping the immediate area. The ground was littered with fallen leaves and brittle twigs. No weapon, no easy escape. The trees were too dense, too tall to climb quickly without exposing herself. Her eyes settled on a cluster of thick, thorny vines clinging to the trunk of the oak, their barbs sharp and unforgiving. A desperate idea sparked. If she could make enough noise, perhaps she could scare it off, or at least buy herself time. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Risa slowly, silently began to gather handfuls of dried leaves and small, brittle branches, creating a small pile near her. The growling intensified, closer now, a low, guttural rumble that vibrated through her chest. She could almost feel the heat of its breath, the predatory focus of its gaze, even though she couldn't see it. This was an ambush, a slow, deliberate stalking of its prey. It wanted her to know it was coming. It wanted her fear. Just as she was about to make her move, a sudden, blinding flash of light exploded in the periphery of her vision. It wasn't natural, not moonlight, not lightning. It was a cold, unnatural blue-white, accompanied by a crackling sound, like ice shattering. The growling stopped abruptly, replaced by a guttural snarl of pure rage and pain. Risa froze, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. What was that? A grotesque shadow, massive and misshapen, lunged from the darkness, silhouetted for a fleeting moment against the eerie blue light. It was enormous, far larger than any wolf she had ever seen, its form contorted, unnatural, like a beast woven from nightmares. Its eyes, she dimly registered, were not the golden or amber of a wolf, but a burning, malevolent red that glowed with an ancient hatred. It roared, a sound that ripped through the night, a sound of agony and fury, as if it had been struck by an unseen force. Then from the direction of the Windwreck territory, faint but unmistakable, came another howl. Not Kaler's king's howl, but a collective, urgent pack call, a warning, a rallying cry, filled with a desperate urgency she had never heard before. It was a call of profound alarm, echoing through the forest, cutting through the monstrous roar. The blue-white light flared again, closer this time, and Risa could see vague figures moving through the trees, human-shaped, but moving with unnatural speed. Hunters. But not the kind she knew. These moved with a strange, almost ethereal grace, armed with weapons that crackled with that same icy blue energy. The monstrous shadow staggered, recoiling from another burst of the strange light. It was being driven back, but it wasn't defeated. It seemed to absorb the blows, its form shimmering, almost dissolving, before solidifying again. As it retreated deeper into the woods, away from the approaching lights and the howling pack, it turned its head, and its burning red eyes locked onto Risa. A silent message passed between them, a promise of future torment. It knew she was there. It had marked her. The howls of the Windwreck pack grew closer, frantic, desperate. Risa could hear the heavy thud of paws, the rustle of bodies moving at incredible speed. They were coming for the monster, but they were also heading her way. Her heart seized with a fresh wave of panic. They would find her. Kaler would find her, an Omega who had abandoned her post, found in the wild, alone and vulnerable. The humiliation would be complete. But more than that, the monster had seen her. It was gone for now, but its gaze had branded her. She was a witness, a loose end. Suddenly, a massive dark form crashed through the undergrowth just meters from her hiding place. It was a Windwreck wolf, larger than the others, its fur black as pitch, its eyes burning with a fierce, protective light. It wasn't Kaler, but one of his elite guards, an alpha known for his tracking skills. He paused, sniffing the air, his head cocked. He was searching for the monster, but his nose was also picking up her scent, faint but undeniable. Risa held her breath, pressing herself against the damp earth, praying she was hidden enough. The pack was here. The danger from the monster had receded, but a different kind of danger, one of discovery and judgment, now loomed, far more immediate and crushing. She heard him growl, a low, questioning rumble, as his eyes swept over her hidden alcove. He knew something was there, and she knew, with a certainty that turned her blood to ice, that her exile was far from over. The deep, questioning growl of the Alpha Guard vibrated through the earth, a sound that bypassed Risa's ears and went straight to her bones. Her heart, already a frantic drum, now slammed against her ribs with the force of a trapped bird. She pressed herself harder against the gnarled roots, willing herself to become one with the ancient oak, to disappear into the very fabric of the forest. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee, to dive deeper into the shadows, to escape the inevitable confrontation. But the alpha's presence was overwhelming, a suffocating blanket of power that pinned her in place. His scent, sharp and dominant, filled her nostrils, laced with the metallic tang of the monster and the urgent musk of the hunt. He wasn't just searching, he was confirming. A rustle of leaves, heavy paws shifting, and then he was there. Not in wolf form, but already halfway to shifting, his muscles rippling under taut skin, eyes glowing with an intense predatory focus. He stood over her, a towering silhouette against the dim light, his gaze like a physical weight. It was Torvin, one of Kylor's most trusted enforcers, a warrior known for his stoicism and unwavering loyalty. His dark eyes, usually reserved, now held a flicker of something Risa couldn't quite decipher. Surprise, perhaps, or a flash of genuine concern. "Risa?" His voice was a low rumble, barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the night like a blade. There was no judgment in his tone, only a profound disbelief. "What in the moon's name are you doing here? Alone?" Her tongue felt thick, useless. Shame, hot and stinging, burned through her. To be found like this, a runaway Omega, utterly exposed and vulnerable, was a deeper humiliation than she had imagined possible. I left," she managed, her voice hoarse, barely audible. "I thought I had to." Torvin's gaze sharpened, moving past her to sweep the surrounding darkness. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring, confirming the lingering, sickening scent of the creature that had stalked her. "You left into this?" he growled, his voice laced with an exasperated urgency. "Did you not feel it? The danger, the fear in the forest?" He lowered himself slightly, his powerful frame coiling, ready for action. "That thing, it's not a rogue, it's not a common beast, it's old blood. And it was here, with you. Old blood." The words struck Risa like a physical blow. Whispers of old blood were ancient, terrifying legends, bedtime stories told to young pups to make them cling closer to their parents. Corrupted ancestors, driven mad by dark magic, their forms twisted, their minds consumed by an insatiable hunger. They were myths, surely, not real. Yet the memory of the monstrous shadow, its burning red eyes, its unnatural roar, was terrifyingly real. "It saw me," Risa whispered, the revelation feeling like a brand. "It knew I was here." Torvin cursed under his breath, a low, guttural sound. "That complicates things. Severely." He paused, his eyes flicking towards the direction of the fading blue-white lights and the distant, urgent howls of the pack. "Kylor has been searching for you, Risa. Frantically, for weeks. Not because he rejected you, but because of this." He gestured vaguely to the lingering scent of the monster. He knew it was stirring. He knew the threat. He thought if he distanced himself, if he made you believe you were unwanted, you would leave. Flee the lands, go somewhere safe, away from the danger he couldn't protect you from if you stayed close. He meant to break the bond, yes, but not out of malice. Out of desperation, to save you. The words hit her like a deluge, washing away the bitter humiliation, replacing it with a staggering wave of disbelief, and then a searing, agonizing pain. It wasn't rejection, it was sacrifice. His silence hadn't been a confession of a new lover, but a desperate, agonizing attempt to push her away, to make her hate him enough to leave, to keep her safe from an ancient evil. The magnitude of his self-sacrifice, the silent torment he must have endured, twisted her gut. All this time she had condemned him, believed him a heartless betrayer, while he was tearing himself apart to protect her. A sob caught in her throat, thick with regret and a crushing understanding. "He tried to break the bond," she repeated, the truth of it a raw wound. "To save me, and I just left. He knew you were strong, Risa, but this old blood, it targets the Omega, the heart of the pack. It feeds on despair, on broken bonds. He feared for you more than anything," Torvin explained, his voice softer now, tinged with a deep sadness. "He couldn't tell you, couldn't voice the threat. To name it, to acknowledge it, risked drawing its full attention. He had to be silent. He had to make you believe he was cold, uncaring, so you would run." He extended a large, calloused hand to her, not in accusation, but in an offer of assistance. "But it followed your scent. It knew you were here. It tracks your despair, Risa, And now, by seeing you, it has marked you. Risa stared at his outstretched hand, then back into the shadows where the monster had been. The icy tendrils of fear, now mingled with a profound sense of responsibility, wrapped around her. She wasn't running from Kaylor's betrayal anymore. She was running from a monster that had singled her out, and her flight had inadvertently drawn it closer to the very lands Kaylor was trying to protect. Her actions, fueled by misunderstanding, had made her a beacon for the darkness. "We need to move," Torvin urged, pulling her to her feet with surprising gentleness. "The others are tracking the monster, but it's cunning, it disappears. The human hunters, the ones with the blue light, they call themselves the Wardens of the Veil. They've been trying to eradicate the old blood for centuries, but their methods are harsh and sometimes indiscriminate. We don't want to get caught between them and the beast." He looked at her, his dark eyes serious. "Kaylor needs you, Risa, not just as his Omega, but as an ally. Your connection to the pack, even frayed, is vital. You are not a weakness. You are the heart he needs to protect." The thought of facing Kaylor, of seeing the pain she had inflicted on him, knowing he had sacrificed his own emotional well-being for her safety, was almost unbearable. But the alternative, remaining a helpless pawn in an ancient war, a target for a monstrous entity, was unthinkable. The dormant hum of her wolf, which had been utterly silent for weeks, now stirred, a faint, tentative vibration beneath her skin. It was still weak, barely a pulse, but it was there, responding to the urgency in Torvin's voice, to the undeniable threat. "Where is Kaylor?" she asked, her voice stronger now, laced with a newfound resolve. The grief hadn't vanished, but it was now overshadowed by a fierce desire to understand, to fight, to make amends. "He's leading the main pursuit, trying to drive the old blood away from the inner lands," Torvin replied, already moving, guiding her deeper into the thicket, away from the immediate path of the hunters, and towards a less traveled route back to the heart of the Windwreck territory. "He'll be furious you left, yes, but he'll be relieved you're alive, and he needs your help to understand what this creature is doing, why it's here now, and why it marked you." They moved swiftly through the dense undergrowth, Torvin a silent, powerful shadow, Risa struggling to keep pace. The forest, once a comfort, then a hostile prison, now felt like a desperate race against time. The distant howls of the pack intensified, then faded, suggesting they were being led on a wild chase. The blue-white lights of the human hunters flickered intermittently, a cold, clinical beacon of their own ruthless pursuit. As they navigated a narrow, twisting path, Risa caught a faint whiff of Kaylor's scent. Not his usual dominant musk, but a blend of exhaustion, grim determination, and a sharp undertone of deep, raw sorrow. It hit her with the force of a physical blow, a direct transmission through the still present, albeit damaged, bond. He was suffering. And it was largely because of her misunderstanding, her flight. The realization fueled a new kind of anguish, but also a fierce determination. She had wronged him, yes, but he had also wronged her by his silence. They were both broken, both wounded, but for different reasons. Suddenly, Torvin stopped, his hand shooting out to block her path, his head tilted, listening. The forest had fallen unnaturally silent once more. No distant howls, no crackling lights, just the frantic thumping of her own heart. Then a low, rasping breath, sickeningly close. The metallic, decaying scent of the old blood was back, stronger than ever. It hadn't retreated far. It had been waiting. "It circled back," Torvin growled, his body tensing, ready to shift. "It's hunting us." Before Risa could react, a guttural shriek ripped through the night, directly above them. A grotesque winged shadow, larger than any bird of prey, plummeted from the canopy, its talons extended, glowing with that same malevolent red light. It wasn't the hulking, ground-bound monster she had seen earlier. It was a different form, a more agile, terrifying manifestation of the old blood. Its burning red eyes, fixed on Risa, promised a swift, brutal end. Her breath hitched. This wasn't just a pursuit. It was a personal vendetta. She was the chosen prey, and the monster had come to claim her. A guttural shriek, raw and ancient, ripped through the night directly above them. The air crackled with malevolent energy as a grotesque winged shadow plummeted from the canopy, its form a nightmarish blur against the starless sky. This was not the hulking, ground-bound monster Risa had glimpsed earlier. This was a more agile, terrifying manifestation of the old blood, a creature of talons and shadow. Its eyes, burning with that same malevolent red light, were fixed on Risa, promising a swift, brutal end. Her breath hitched, fear constricting her throat until she could barely draw air. This wasn't just a pursuit, it was a personal vendetta. She was the chosen prey, and the monster had come to claim her. Torvin reacted with the speed and ferocity of a seasoned warrior. "Get down," he roared, shoving Risa violently to the side, sending her sprawling onto the damp forest floor. In the same fluid motion, his body convulsed, bones shifting and cracking with sickening speed as he burst into his full wolf form. A massive, obsidian-furred alpha, he launched himself upwards, a living missile of muscle and teeth, meeting the descending horror mid-air. The clash was deafening, a shriek of rage from the old blood, a savage snarl from Torvin, the sickening thud of their bodies colliding. Risa lay momentarily stunned, the breath knocked from her lungs, her head ringing from the impact with the earth. Above her, a whirlwind of ancient evil and primal strength tore through the air. The winged beast, with its leathery, bat-like wings and razor-sharp talons, raked against Torvin's thick fur, leaving trails of glowing red energy that hissed as they dissipated. Torvin, despite his immense size and power, struggled against the creature's unnatural agility. It darted and weaved, its movements too swift, too erratic for a normal wolf to track. Every time Torvin snapped his jaws, the monster seemed to melt away, only to reappear from a different angle, its talons aiming for his eyes, his throat. A wave of profound helplessness washed over Risa. Her wolf, usually a source of strength, remained a frustrating void, a silent protest against her broken bond. She longed for the enhanced senses, the agility, the sheer power that would allow her to aid Torvin. But she was trapped in her human form, utterly vulnerable. Her hands clenched into fists, useless against such a foe. She watched, horrified, as Torvin took a deep gash to his shoulder, a dark, viscous ichor oozing from the wound, sizzling faintly on the damp leaves. His growls turned to snarls of pain and frustration. The old blood was toying with him, its burning red eyes occasionally flicking down to Risa, a silent promise of what was to come once it had dispatched her protector. "Torvin!" she screamed, her voice raw, but it was lost in the din of the battle. She needed to do something, anything. Her Omega instincts, usually focused on soothing and healing, now twisted into a desperate need to protect, to divert. She scanned the ground frantically, searching for a weapon, a distraction, anything that could tip the scales. Her gaze fell on a scattering of smooth, fist-sized stones, useless against such a creature. Then her eyes landed on a patch of luminescent moss, glowing faintly with an ethereal, cold light. It was a common sight in these ancient woods, known for its mild hallucinogenic properties if ingested or crushed and inhaled. A desperate, wild idea sparked. With trembling hands, Risa began to claw at the moss, tearing it from the bark, crushing it in her palms. The monster shrieked again, driving Torvin back with a flurry of blows, leaving him momentarily dazed. This was her chance. With a guttural cry of desperation, Risa hurled the handful of crushed, glowing moss directly at the monster's eyes. The creature, momentarily startled by the sudden flash of light and the unexpected sensation, recoiled with a furious hiss. It wasn't a fatal blow, but it bought Torvin a precious second. In that instant, a roar, mighty and earth-shattering, ripped through the forest. It was a sound Risa knew to her very core, a sound that resonated not just in her ears, but deep within the dormant parts of her wolf, stirring it from its slumber with a jolt of raw, untamed power. Kaelor, the bond, which had felt like a dead thing for weeks, suddenly flared, a blinding surge of his presence, his fierce protective rage, his desperate relief, flooding her senses. It was like a dam breaking, a torrent of emotion washing over her, overwhelming her with its intensity. He was here. He was truly here. A blur of dark fur, larger and more powerful than Torvin, erupted from the trees. Kaelor, in his magnificent alpha wolf form, launched himself into the fray. His movements were a symphony of deadly grace and raw, untamed power. He didn't just fight, he commanded the space, his presence alone pushing back the encroaching shadows. The old blood shrieked again, a sound of pure terror this time, as Kaelor locked his powerful jaws onto one of its leathery wings. There was a sickening tearing sound, a spray of viscous, dark ichor, and the monster howled in agony, its red eyes burning with impotent fury. Kaelor, his eyes glowing with an incandescent gold, shook his head violently, ripping a massive chunk from the creature's wing. The old blood stumbled, its flight erratic, its movements clumsy. It screeched a final, piercing lament, a promise of vengeance in its dying cry, before flapping awkwardly away, disappearing into the deepest shadows, leaving a trail of its foul ichor staining the ancient trees. The forest fell silent once more, save for the heavy, ragged breathing of Kaelor and Torvin. Torvin, still in his wolf form, limped towards Kaelor, nudging his head against the Alpha King's flank in a gesture of respect and exhaustion. Kaelor, however, ignored him. His golden eyes, still blazing with residual fury, swept over the clearing, settling on Risa. She pushed herself to her feet, her body trembling, her eyes locked with his. The bond, though still fractured, hummed between them, a raw, exposed nerve. She could feel his anger, yes, but beneath it, a crushing wave of relief, so potent it almost brought her to her knees. And then something else. A deep, profound sorrow, a mirror of her own. Kaelor slowly began to shift, his massive wolf form melting away, muscles rippling, bones reforming, until he stood before her, naked and powerful, a king reborn from the fury of the beast. His face, usually a mask of regal stoicism, was etched with exhaustion and a torment Risa now understood all too well. His hair, dark as midnight, was matted with sweat, his body scarred, but his gaze, when it met hers, was piercing. He took a step towards her, then another, closing the distance between them. Risa stood frozen, guilt and a desperate longing warring within her. She saw the question in his eyes, the accusation, the pain she had caused him. But she also saw the raw, undeniable love, the fierce possessiveness that had never truly faded, even when he had tried to push her away. He stopped just inches from her, his presence overwhelming, filling her senses with his scent. Pine ozone, blood, and something uniquely Kaelor, something that smelled of home. His hand, calloused and strong, reached out, not to touch her, but to cup her cheek, his thumb gently brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure connection that reverberated through her entire being, awakening something deep within her, a spark of her wolf finally stirring to life. "Risa," he breathed, his voice rough, thick with unshed emotion, a tremor running through the single word. "My Omega. What have you done?" It wasn't a question of accusation, but of profound, aching despair, mingled with an almost desperate hope. His gaze held hers, an unspoken plea for understanding, for forgiveness. The weight of weeks of misunderstanding, of silent suffering, hung heavy in the air between them, a fragile bridge needing to be crossed. His touch, his voice, had shattered the last vestiges of her emotional defenses, leaving her utterly exposed, raw, and aching. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that the truth of their fractured bond, and the monster that had caused it, was only just beginning to unfold. "Risa," Kaelor breathed, his voice raw, thick with unshed emotion, a tremor running through the single word that was both an accusation and a profound aching plea. His hand, calloused and strong, still cupped her cheek, his thumb gently brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure connection that reverberated through her entire being, awakening something deep within her, a spark of her wolf finally stirring to life, no longer a desolate void, but a faint, insistent hum. The scent of him, pine, ozone, blood, and that uniquely Kaelor musk that was home, filled her senses, overwhelming her with its potent comfort and the sheer intensity of his presence. She stared into his eyes, no longer just golden with residual fury, but shadowed with a deep, crushing sorrow that mirrored her own. The weight of weeks of misunderstanding, of silent suffering, hung heavy in the air between them, a fragile bridge needing to be crossed. His touch, his voice, had shattered the last vestiges of her emotional defenses, leaving her utterly exposed, raw, and aching. "What have I done?" she whispered, her voice cracking, the question not truly for him, but for herself. I thought you chose another. You let me believe it, Kaylor. You let me walk away broken and humiliated." The anger, suppressed for so long, flared briefly, a desperate need for him to understand her pain. "Why? Why the silence? Why not tell me?" Kaylor's hand dropped from her face, clenching into a fist at his side. His gaze drifted to Torvin, who had finally shifted back to human form. His body slumped against a tree, cradling his bleeding shoulder. A wave of guilt washed over Risa, seeing the extent of Torvin's injury. She had been so caught in her own emotional turmoil, she'd forgotten the immediate cost of the battle. "Because I couldn't," Kaylor said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that seemed to absorb all other sounds. To speak its name, to acknowledge its presence aloud, was to invite its full attention. To name the threat was to draw its power, to give it strength over what was named. It targets the Omega, Risa. Always the Omega. It feeds on despair, on fear, on broken bonds. You, my Omega, are the heart of this pack, the very source of its emotional strength. If it had focused on you while you were here, bound to me, to the pack, it would have ripped us all apart. I had to sever the connection, to make you believe you were unwanted, so you would flee. Flee the lands, go somewhere safe, anywhere away from this place, and the danger I couldn't protect you from if you stayed close. He ran a hand through his dark, sweat-matted hair, his torment palpable. Every day, every hour you were gone was a living hell, but I knew if you hated me enough, if you believed I had discarded you, you would run further, faster, and be safe from it. I watched you leave. I felt the tearing of our bond, the anguish in your heart, and I couldn't make a sound. I couldn't reach for you. I was sacrificing my own soul to save yours, to save this pack. His golden eyes, filled with a raw, agonizing love, pleaded for her understanding. "I never meant to sacrifice you, Risa. I meant to sacrifice us, to save you." The truth, brutal and precise, landed with the force of a physical blow. Her mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of the heartless alpha who had cast her aside with this broken man, who had endured unimaginable pain to protect her. The tears flowed freely now, not just from sorrow, but from a profound, shattering realization. He hadn't stopped loving her. He had loved her so fiercely, so completely, that he had been willing to destroy his own happiness, his own bond, to ensure her survival. The silent suffering she had endured was a pale shadow compared to the torment he must have lived through, the self-imposed exile from his own heart. "Kaylor," she choked out, stepping forward, her hands reaching for him instinctively. "Oh, Kaylor." Her fingers brushed his bare arm, and the contact was a searing brand, reigniting a primal fire that had never truly died. The hum of her wolf intensified, a vibrant, hopeful thrumming beneath her skin, responding to the magnetic pull of her true mate. He met her halfway, his powerful arms wrapping around her, pulling her against his naked chest. The warmth of his skin, the powerful beat of his heart against hers, was a balm to her ravaged soul. She buried her face against his shoulder, inhaling his scent, clinging to him as if he were the last anchor in a raging storm. His embrace was fierce, possessive, desperate, as if he feared she might vanish if he didn't hold her tight enough. She felt the tremor running through his body, the ragged breaths he took, the sheer overwhelming relief that coursed through him now that she was back in his arms. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered against her hair, his voice thick with emotion, his lips brushing her temple. "Every moment you were gone was a piece of my soul tearing away. I almost broke, Risa. I almost went mad with the silence, but I had to protect you." "I know," she sobbed, holding him tighter. "I know now. I'm so sorry, Kaylor. I should have trusted you, should have known you wouldn't abandon me without reason." He pulled back slightly, his hands framing her face, his gaze searching hers. "There was no other way. The old blood. It finds the cracks. It preys on fear, on weakness, on doubt within the pack. Your despair, your flight, it drew it to you. It marked you tonight because you saw it, and because it sensed your pain, your isolation. It believes you are a vessel." Torvin, pushing himself to his feet with a groan, interrupted them. "My king, with all due respect, We cannot stay here. That creature, it's wounded, but not gone. And the wardens, they'll be tracking its energy signature. We need to get Risa to safety, away from the lingering scent of that thing. His face was pale, but his resolve was clear. Kaelor nodded, his jaw tight. He looked at Torvin, his eyes softening with gratitude. Thank you, Torvin, for everything. He then turned his full attention back to Risa, his gaze intense. The bond is fractured, but it is not broken. It will heal, my love. We will heal. But first, we must survive. The old blood will come for you again. It senses your innate Omega power, even dormant. It wants to corrupt it, to claim it. And the wardens, they are merciless. They will not distinguish between a corrupted Omega and one merely touched by the old blood. He pulled her close again, a desperate, protective gesture. We need to move quickly before it regathers its strength, or before the wardens find us. He pressed a rough, urgent kiss to her forehead, a promise of protection, of unwavering love, even amidst the chaos. But you are not alone, Risa, never again. Just as they prepared to move, a chilling sound echoed through the trees. Not a monstrous shriek, but a series of sharp, metallic clicks, followed by the distinctive cold hum of the blue-white energy. The wardens. They were closer than Torvin had anticipated. And they were not just tracking the monster. They were tracking any residual energy, any living thing that might have come into contact with the old blood. They're on us, Torvin hissed, already half-shifting, his eyes darting through the undergrowth. They've bypassed the main pack pursuit. They're coming straight for this location. Kaelor snarled, his wolf form threatening to erupt. He pulled Risa behind him, shielding her with his body. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of ozone and the acrid tang of their strange energy weapons. A faint ethereal glow began to emanate from Risa's skin, a subtle shimmer that caught Kaelor's eye. It was the same blue-white light as the warden's weapons, a residual mark left by the old blood's attack, an undeniable beacon for their ruthless pursuit. She was not just marked, she was now glowing, an unwitting target. The wardens would see her, and they would show no mercy. Their long night of terror was far from over. The air crackled, sharp and cold, a prelude to the biting hum of the blue-white energy that pulsed through the forest. Risa's skin, already chilled by the night, now began to prickle, the ethereal glow intensifying around her, an undeniable beacon in the suffocating darkness. It wasn't just a faint shimmer, it was a soft, internal luminescence, emanating from her very pores, turning her into a living lantern for any hunter with eyes to see. The metallic clicks grew louder, closer, followed by the heavy, rhythmic tread of boots on damp earth. The wardens were no longer a distant threat. They were upon them. Kaelor's snarl was primal, a low guttural warning rumble that vibrated through Risa's body as he pulled her instinctively behind him, shielding her with the powerful breath of his naked chest. His body was a wall of muscle and bone, radiating pure, unadulterated alpha fury. His golden eyes, blazing with an incandescent light, swept the surrounding gloom, calculating, strategizing, his mind a whirlwind of protective instincts. He couldn't afford to fully shift. He needed his human dexterity, his ability to communicate, his tactical brilliance. They're not just tracking the old blood's residue, Torvin rasped, struggling to his feet, clutching his wounded shoulder. His face was a mask of pain, but his eyes were sharp, focused. They're tracking her. That glow, Kaelor, it's not normal. It's reacting to their energy, or to the old blood's touch. She's a homing beacon. Risa felt a surge of terror, cold and absolute. A homing beacon. Her very being was betraying them, drawing both ancient evil and ruthless humans to their location. The glow felt strange, not painful, but like a subtle internal vibration, a resonance that made her acutely aware of the warden's proximity, as if their cold energy hummed in her own blood. It was a terrifying new sensation, a dormant part of her Omega self stirring in a way she had never experienced. I can feel them, she whispered, her voice trembling. They're metallic, cold, like dead things. Kaelor turned his head slightly, his gaze piercing. You can sense them? She nodded, pressing closer to his back. It's like the glow is connected to them. I can feel their purpose, their cold intent. A flicker of something akin to awe, mixed with grim determination, crossed Kaylor's face. Your Omega gift, Risa. It's awakening. This is why the old blood marked you. It wants that power, and the wardens, they will want to study it, dissect it, or worse, destroy it. He gripped her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, a powerful, unspoken promise passing between them. Torvin, cover our flank. We need to move. There's an old smuggler's path through the marsh further west. It's treacherous, but it will throw them off our trail. Before Torvin could respond, 3 figures emerged from the shadows, their forms cloaked in dark, form-fitting armor, their faces obscured by helmets that pulsed with the same icy blue light as their weapons. They moved with an almost unnatural silence, their glowing staffs held aloft, crackling with raw energy. These were not the common hunters of local lore. These were the wardens, a mysterious order steeped in ancient knowledge and ruthless efficiency. Their unblinking, glowing visor eyes fixed immediately on Risa, drawn to her luminescence like moths to a flame. By the sacred laws of the Veil, we claim this anomaly, one of them intoned, their voice distorted by a modulator, devoid of all human warmth. Yield, Alpha, hand over the marked one, and you will be spared. Kaylor's wolf was barely contained, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. She is my Omega. You will not touch her. Without another word, the wardens attacked. Their movements were impossibly fast, their staffs striking with precision, arcs of blue energy searing the air. Kaylor, despite his nakedness, met them with the ferocity of a cornered beast, his body a blur of motion. He dodged, weaved, and struck, his fists like sledgehammers, his bare skin seemingly impervious to the energy blasts that grazed him. He fought with a desperate, primal grace, every move fueled by his singular drive to protect Risa. Torvin, limping but determined, intercepted one of the wardens, snarling as he engaged them, his own less refined fighting style, a brutal contrast to Kaylor's almost elegant savagery. The forest floor became a battleground, the air thick with the scent of ozone, fear, and the metallic tang of the warden's strange tech. Risa, pressed against a tree, watched in horrified awe. Kaylor was a force of nature, a king defending his queen, a wolf protecting his mate. She felt the vibrations of his rage through their bond, a powerful current that surged through her, stirring her dormant wolf with increasing intensity. The glow around her pulsed, mirroring his emotions, becoming brighter with his fury. Suddenly, a warden broke past Kaylor, aiming their crackling staff directly at Risa. Terror seized her, paralyzing her for a crucial second. But then, as the energy bolt streaked towards her, something deep within her rebelled. A raw, unbidden instinct surged, and with a guttural cry, Risa threw her hands out. A shimmering silver light, cold and pure, erupted from her palms, meeting the blue energy bolt mid-air. There was a deafening crack, and both energies dissipated into a shower of sparks. The warden staggered back, momentarily stunned. Kaylor, seeing Risa's unexpected defense, roared, using the distraction to land a devastating blow to another warden, sending them sprawling. Risa stared at her hands, trembling. She had done that. Her Omega power, long thought dormant or lost, had manifested, not as empathy or healing, but as a shield of pure, untamed energy. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and deeply connected to the ancient wild magic of the forest. Risa, the marsh! Kaylor yelled, his eyes meeting hers, a silent communication passing between them. He understood. He saw the latent power, the fierce awakening, and his gaze was filled not with fear, but with pride and renewed hope. He knew she wasn't just a victim, she was a weapon, a shield, a force to be reckoned with. He fought his way back to her, grabbing her hand once more. Run! Follow Torvin! With a shared nod, Torvin broke free from his engagement, limping towards a dense thicket of reeds and gnarled roots, the entrance to the treacherous marsh. Risa, still feeling the hum of power in her hands, followed, her newfound agility surprising even herself. Kaylor covered their retreat, a whirlwind of fists and snarls, until they plunged into the murky depths of the swamp. The marsh was a nightmare of tangled roots, sucking mud, and stagnant water. The air hung heavy with the smell of decay, and unseen things rustled beneath the surface. The glow around Risa dimmed slightly here, the oppressive nature of the swamp seeming to dampen the warden's energy signature. Kaylor moved ahead, his senses guiding them through the treacherous terrain, his hand never leaving Risa's. "Stay close," he muttered, his voice low, intimate, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "We're almost through the worst of it." His proximity, his touch, was a grounding force amidst the chaos, a silent promise that he would not let her fall. The bond between them, once a fragile thread, now felt like a thick, vibrant rope, humming with renewed life, fortified by shared danger and the awakening of her dormant power. They pushed through the last of the reeds, emerging onto slightly firmer ground. The marsh air began to clear, replaced by the crisp, cool air of the deeper forest. Kaylor paused, listening intently. No sounds of the wardens, they had shaken them for now. But as he turned to Risa, his relief was short-lived. The glow around her, which had dimmed in the marsh, now flared with blinding intensity. It pulsed, not with the cold blue of the wardens, but with the shimmering silver she had manifested earlier. And it wasn't just her body. The ground around her, touched by her light, began to emit a faint, shimmering vapor, coalescing into swirling spectral forms. Ancient trees, bathed in her light, seemed to awaken, their gnarled branches reaching towards her, a faint, almost melodic whisper rising from the forest floor. The forest itself was reacting to her, and the light, powerful and beautiful, was drawing something else to them. From the deepest shadows of the ancient wood, a low, guttural growl echoed, a sound of immense, unfathomable hunger. It was the old blood, drawn not by the wardens, not by despair, but by the raw, burgeoning power of Risa's awakened Omega. It had returned, drawn by the very light she now emitted, seeing her not just as a vessel, but as a source, a beacon it yearned to consume. Kaylor pulled her close, his golden eyes wide with a mix of awe and dread. They had escaped one predator, only to find themselves directly in the path of another, far more ancient and terrifying, one that now saw Risa as its ultimate prize. The battle for her soul and for the very heart of the pack was far from over. From the deepest shadows of the ancient wood, a low, guttural growl echoed. Not the familiar rumble of a wolf, but a sound of immense, unfathomable hunger, of primal rot and ancient malice. The air grew heavy, thick with the sickly sweet tang of decay and stagnant magic, a stench that made Risa's stomach churn. The glowing silver light emanating from her intensified, pulsing in frantic rhythm with her pounding heart. It wasn't just her body, the ground around her shimmered, spectral vapors curling from the damp earth, and the ancient trees, bathed in her light, seemed to awaken, their gnarled branches reaching, a faint, almost melodic whisper rising from the forest floor. The forest itself was reacting to her, and the light, powerful and beautiful, was drawing the old blood closer, seeing her not just as a vessel, but as a source, a beacon it yearned to consume. Kaylor pulled her close, shielding her with his body, his golden eyes wide with a mix of awe for her burgeoning power and dread for the danger it invoked. He was naked, vulnerable in his human form, but he radiated an unyielding strength, a fierce determination that seemed to push back the encroaching darkness. His arms wrapped around her, his touch a grounding force amidst the chaos, a silent promise that he would not let her fall. The bond between them, once a fragile thread, now felt like a thick, vibrant rope, humming with renewed life, fortified by shared danger and the magnificent awakening of her dormant power. "It's coming," Risa whispered, her voice barely audible, but Kaylor heard it, a shared thought through their re-strengthening bond. She could feel the old blood's presence like a physical weight, its malevolent intent a cold hand clutching at her soul, attempting to seep into the radiant light she now emitted. It wanted to corrupt her, to twist her Omega essence into something dark and monstrous, just as it had twisted itself. But something fierce, something elemental, within Risa resisted. The silver light around her pulsed harder, a defensive barrier of pure, unblemished energy. Kaylor's grip tightened. "I know, my love, but you are not alone. You have the forest and you have me. Let your power rise, Risa. Do not fear it. Control it." His words were a command, but also a profound reassurance, a balm to her fear. He trusted her, even with this terrifying, unknown force coursing through her. From the deepest part of the shadows, where the light of her glow barely reached, the old blood finally emerged, It was a horrifying amalgamation of its previous forms. The hulking, ground-bound mass, the grotesque, winged terror, now combined into a singular, towering entity. Its form rippled and shifted, a liquid darkness coalescing into razor claws and gaping maws lined with needle-sharp teeth. Its eyes, hundreds of them, burned with malevolent red light, all fixed on Risa. It let out a shriek that was both a challenge and a ravenous cry, a sound that threatened to tear the very fabric of the forest apart. "Torvin!" Kalor roared, his voice laced with the fury of his alpha command. "Protect Risa! I will draw its attention!" Torvin, limping heavily, but his eyes burning with renewed resolve, nodded. "My king." He shifted into his wolf form, a dark blur of protective fury, positioning himself between Risa and the monstrous entity, a loyal shield against the encroaching evil. Kalor, without a moment's hesitation, launched himself forward. He was still human, but his movements were preternatural, a blurring streak of muscle and raw power. He didn't have the claws or teeth of his wolf form, but his fists were devastating weapons, imbued with the strength of an alpha king. He moved with a warrior's grace, dodging the monster's sweeping claws, striking at its shifting form, trying to find a weak point, a vulnerability. His blows, though powerful, seemed to merely ripple through the old blood's amorphous body, momentarily disrupting its shape before it reformed with a furious hiss. Risa watched, her heart in her throat. Kalor was fighting a losing battle, his human form unable to inflict lasting damage. The old blood was too vast, too ancient, too corrupted. Its burning eyes kept flickering back to her, its hunger a palpable force. She felt it trying to worm its way into her mind, whispering promises of power, of an end to pain, if she would only surrender to its darkness. But then she heard Kalor's fierce snarl, saw his unwavering determination, felt the strength of his will through their bond. He was fighting for her, for them, for the pack. And then a new understanding dawned. Her Omega power wasn't just a shield. It was a conduit. It was the heart of the pack, yes, but it was also the heart of this ancient forest, connected to life, to growth, to pure, untainted energy. The whispers of the trees intensified around her, urging her, guiding her. "Kalor!" she screamed, her voice suddenly strong, resonant with her burgeoning power. "Use my light, channel it!" Kalor heard her, a spark of understanding flashing in his golden eyes. He dodged a massive, crushing blow from the old blood, then surged back towards Risa, his hand reaching for hers. The moment their skin touched, a torrent of silver light exploded from Risa, surging through their intertwined hands, wrapping around Kalor, empowering him. He glowed, his skin shimmering with the same ethereal silver, his movements becoming even faster, his punches now striking with the force of an avalanche. With a primal roar, Kalor launched himself at the old blood. His fist, imbued with Risa's pure Omega light, struck the creature's shifting mass. This time, the impact was different. Where his previous blows had merely rippled, this one tore. The old blood shrieked, a sound of agony, as a massive chunk of its dark form dissolved into acrid smoke, leaving a gaping wound. The monster recoiled, its red eyes blazing with fury, and a flicker of something new, fear. It had underestimated them, it had underestimated Risa, but the old blood was cunning and ancient. It roared again, not at Kalor, but directly at Torvin. A massive, shadowy claw shot out, moving with impossible speed, striking the Alpha Guard with devastating force. Torvin, already weakened, barely had time to snarl before he was flung against a massive tree, his body slumping, unmoving. "Torvin!" Risa cried, a wave of anguish and fear washing over her. The monster lunged, taking advantage of their distraction, aiming its remaining claws at Kalor, its form reforming, regenerating rapidly. Kalor, still glowing with Risa's light, met its charge with unflinching resolve. He was powerful, but even he could not sustain this alone. "Risa, focus!" Kalor's voice, though strained, cut through her grief. "Give me more. We must banish it." Risa closed her eyes, focusing all her will, all her despair, all her newfound power. The silver light around her surged, growing blindingly bright. She felt the ancient primal energy of the forest flow through her, responding to her Omega call. It was a desperate, all-consuming surge of power, channeled not just from herself, but from the very heart of the living wood. When she opened her eyes, they were no longer her usual soft brown. They blazed with the same intense silver light that enveloped her, reflecting the raw, untamed power she now wielded. She reached out, not to Kaylor, but directly at the old blood. A blinding beam of pure, concentrated silver energy shot from her outstretched hand, striking the creature with the force of 1,000 lightning bolts. The old blood shrieked, a sound of pure, unadulterated pain and terror. Its form began to unravel, not dissolving into smoke, but disintegrating into nothingness, its malevolent red eyes burning out one by one. The air filled with a deafening cacophony of ancient cries, as if countless tortured souls were being released from its vile essence. The stench of decay vanished, replaced by the clean, crisp scent of ozone and damp earth, as the very forest seemed to exhale a sigh of relief. Then, with a final, desperate, fading wail, the old blood was gone, utterly, completely vanished, leaving no trace behind but the lingering scent of ozone and a profound, ringing silence. The silver light around Riza faded, leaving her weak, trembling, but triumphant. She swayed, utterly drained, her knees threatening to buckle. Kaylor caught her, pulling her close, his arms strong and steady. He was no longer glowing, but his strength was unwavering. He buried his face in her hair, breathing her in, a guttural sound of relief escaping his chest. "You did it, my Omega," he whispered, his voice thick with awe and pride. "You saved us all." Risa leaned into him, the last vestiges of her strength ebbing away. "Torvin," she gasped, her eyes flying to the unmoving form of the Alpha Guard. Kaylor gently lowered her to the ground, then rushed to Torvin's side, his face grim. He knelt, his fingers pressing against Torvin's neck, searching for a pulse. The silence was deafening, hanging heavy with the aftermath of battle, the weight of their victory, and the potential cost. Risa watched, her heart pounding, her breath held. The old blood was gone, but the price of their triumph, the sacrifice made to save them all, was still to be revealed. The true weight of their unbroken bond, forged in fire and shadow, now settled upon them, a crown of thorns and steel. The profound, ringing silence that followed the old blood's demise was broken only by the ragged breathing of Kaylor and Risa, and the frantic thumping of her own heart. The air, once heavy with decay, now shimmered with a clean, almost electric tang of ozone and damp earth, as if the forest itself was exhaling a sigh of deep relief. Risa swayed, utterly drained, her knees threatening to buckle beneath her. Kaylor, his strength unwavering despite his own ordeal, caught her, his powerful arms wrapping around her, holding her upright. He buried his face in her hair, breathing her in, a guttural sound of pure, unadulterated relief escaping his chest. "You did it, my Omega," he whispered, his voice thick with awe and pride. "You saved us all." But Risa's eyes, though heavy with exhaustion, flew to the still form of Torvin, slumped against the ancient tree. "Torvin," she gasped, her voice raw with anguish. The fear that had gripped her when she saw him fall returned with a vengeance. Kaylor gently lowered her to the ground, his face grim, and rushed to the Alpha Guard's side. He knelt, his fingers pressing against Torvin's neck, searching for a pulse. The silence was deafening, hanging heavy with the aftermath of battle, the weight of their victory, and the potential devastating cost. Risa watched, her heart pounding, her breath held captive in her chest. A wave of profound guilt washed over her. Torvin had been injured protecting her, a consequence of her misunderstanding and flight. She crawled towards him, her hands instinctively reaching out, a faint silver shimmer still clinging to her fingertips. Kaylor looked up, his golden eyes meeting hers, a silent communication passing between them. He felt it too, the delicate balance between life and death. "His pulse is weak," Kaylor murmured, his brow furrowed with concern. "His shoulder wound. And that impact. He's gravely hurt." Without thinking, Risa placed her trembling hands gently on Torvin's chest, just above his heart. She closed her eyes, focusing on the lingering silver light within her, the incredible life-giving power she had just unleashed. It was different from her fighting power. This was the Omega's ancient gift, the one of life and healing amplified by her recent awakening. She poured all her will, all her raw energy into him. A faint warmth spread from her palms, a shimmering silver mist rising from Torvin's body, swirling around him. She felt the tears stream down her face, not of sorrow, but of fierce determination, of a desperate plea for life. Moments stretched into an eternity. Then, Torvin stirred, a low groan escaping his lips. His eyes fluttered open, dark and dazed, but unmistakably alive. He coughed, a painful sound. Then his gaze fixed on Risa, a flicker of understanding, and then gratitude in their depths. "Risa," he rasped, his voice still weak but clear. You healed me." Kylor let out a long, shuddering breath, a sound of profound relief that echoed Risa's own. He clasped Torvin's hand, a silent acknowledgement of his bravery and loyalty. "You are safe, my brother. Rest now." With Torvin stable, Kylor turned back to Risa, pulling her into his arms, a possessive, almost desperate embrace. "My Omega, Kal," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his lips brushing her temple. "My healer, my protector, my queen." He kissed her then, deeply, passionately, a kiss that tasted of fear and triumph, of forgiveness and renewed hope. It was a kiss that sealed their bond, not just with their wolves, but with their very souls. They stayed there for a long time, holding each other, allowing the profound relief and the sheer weight of their shared ordeal to wash over them. The sun was beginning to lighten the eastern sky, painting the forest in hues of soft rose and gold, chasing away the lingering shadows of the night. Eventually, Kylor helped Torvin to his feet, supporting his weakened frame. Together, they began the solemn journey back towards the Windwreck lands. Risa walked beside Kylor, his hand never leaving hers, the bond between them vibrant and whole, humming with a power that felt stronger, deeper than ever before. The residual glow on her skin had faded, but the inner light, the sense of her awakened Omega power, remained, a quiet hum beneath her skin. Their return to the pack was met with a stunned silence that quickly erupted into a roar of relief and joy. The pack had been frantically searching, their worry palpable. When they saw Kylor, naked but strong, walking hand in hand with Risa, who carried herself with a new, quiet dignity, a collective gasp swept through them. The truth, already whispered through the Alpha-Omega bond and shared by the returning warriors, settled over them. Kylor's sacrifice, Risa's unwitting role, the ancient evil, and her triumphant power. Kylor, standing before his pack, pulled Risa forward. His voice, usually commanding, was now imbued with a profound humility and pride. "My pack," he announced, his gaze sweeping over every face. "My Omega, Risa, risked everything for us. She faced the old blood, a darkness we believed only legend, and with her newly awakened power, she banished it. She is the heart of this pack, the protector of its soul, and she will lead us into a new era of strength and light." He looked at Risa, his eyes blazing with adoration. "Forgive me, my love, for the pain I caused. My silence was a desperate act to save you, and I would do it again, even if it meant my own destruction. But never again will I keep such a truth from you." Tears streamed down Risa's face, not of sorrow, but of overwhelming love and acceptance. She looked at Kylor, then at her pack, her family. She was home, and she was more than just an Omega. She was the embodiment of the pack's enduring spirit, its raw power. In the days and weeks that followed, the Windwreck lands slowly returned to a new kind of normal. Torvin made a full recovery, his loyalty to Kylor and Risa unwavering, a testament to Risa's healing gift. The Wardens of the Vale, having witnessed Risa's unique power and the complete annihilation of the old blood, retreated, leaving the Windwreck pack unmolested. They seemed to recognize a force beyond their understanding, a balance that had been restored by ancient magic, not by their cold technology. The old blood was truly gone, banished to the void from whence it came, a dark chapter closed forever. Risa's Omega power blossomed. She could still soothe and heal, her touch now even more potent. But she also possessed an innate connection to the forest itself, a conduit for its ancient energy, a guardian of its delicate balance. She worked alongside Kylor, her insight and unique senses proving invaluable in understanding and protecting their territory. The whispers of the trees were her allies, the forest her confidant. One evening, as the full moon cast its silver glow over the newly rebuilt Omega Den, Kaylor found Risa standing by the window, gazing out at the peaceful woods. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder, inhaling her familiar, comforting scent. "Are you truly happy, my love?" he whispered, his voice laced with the quiet anxiety that still haunted him, the fear that his past actions had left an irreparable scar. Risa leaned back into his embrace, her fingers intertwining with his. "More than happy, Kaylor. I am whole. Our bond, once broken by silence, is now forged in fire and truth. I understand now. I forgive you, my king, and I love you fiercely for the man who was willing to lose everything to save me." She turned in his arms, her silver eyes, now a permanent reflection of her awakened power, gazing up at him. "You saved me from a monster, Kaylor, but I saved you from your silence. We are stronger together, my love, always." He kissed her then, a tender, lingering kiss that promised an eternity of shared burdens and boundless love. He saw in her eyes not just his Omega, but his queen, a powerful force of nature who wore her crown of thorns and steel with grace, and whose heart, once broken, now beat with an unbreakable light. Their path had been paved with pain and misunderstanding, but it had led them to a truth far deeper, a bond far stronger, and a love that would defy any darkness. The Windwreck lands and their hearts were finally at peace.